this video together so I can show you how we've gone about teaching our students during class time the best ways to revise factual content that we have been covering with them as part of our course. Now, this session that I'm about to show you here was planned and delivered this week in response to lower than expected marks on some factual tests. Now, of course, these students have been at home during the lockdown period. They've had more blended and remote learning than any previous year group, but we didn't want to just take that for granted. So we decided to take a different approach and to give them a survey after these assessments and to ask them to be really honest about whether they'd revised, and if they had, how they'd gone about their revision. And when we had a look at the results, they were really illuminating and taught us quite a lot about how we needed to better approach our lessons with our students in terms of the skills we were embedding with them. So, for example, we asked them, of course, to be honest if they had revised for the two tests. We had one on Greek art and one on the Odyssey. Now, obviously, there are some numbers there that I would rather we didn't have. 12 didn't revise for the Greek art factual test, and 18 didn't revise for the Odyssey, but the majority did. So there had to be something then going on with our methods of revision. We asked them how many hours in total did they spend revising for the tests, and what we could see is that the greatest number spent between 1 and 2 hours, which is not an awful lot when you are revising an entire topic or all the work you have done so far on the course. But even more worryingly is the majority of people are cramming, revising the night before, or simply a couple of times in the week leading up to it. And we were seeing that our students were not regularly revising over the weeks, getting ready for an assessment, nor were many of them revising regularly, accepting that just going to lessons was not going to be an effective way of your content going in. You had to revisit it regularly over time. We also asked them what revision methods they used, and there was a lot of what I would call passive methods. People reading over their notes, which of course, unless you've got a photographic memory, is not going to be particularly effective. Other people just saying they looked through their booklets, rereading some parts of the Odyssey. So, okay, they might get an idea of the plot, but that's not going to help with the key themes and all the other topics that we've been establishing as we've gone along. And again, someone else saying that they basically just read through the information. So it was our revision techniques that needed some work, as well as when to revise. Now, one of the most effective revision videos that I've ever come across, or revision strategy videos rather, I should say, comes from the Learning Scientists. If you haven't checked out this website, please do, because they've got lots of resources on there that you can download and share with students on how they can go about revising. But this video here, which I'm about to play for you, is a really good one to share with students at the beginning of a session, because it goes over each of the strategies that they should be employing, and then you can go forward and trial some of those strategies with your students. So I'm going to play this for you now.
How to study effectively using 6 essential strategies. If you're a student, you've probably wondered, what is the most effective way to study? That's a smart question, because most people, unfortunately, waste their time with stuff that just isn't effective. So I asked the cognitive psychologists over at the Learning Scientists for some tips. After all their research into the science of learning and absolute best practice study skills, here are their top 6 strategies to bring out your inner genius. The first strategy is called spaced practice. 5 hours of study crammed into one intensive session is not as good as that same 5 hours spread out over 2 weeks. You'll learn more and get better results with the same amount of time or less. It'll be less stressful than the panic of cramming, and because you'll learn more, you'll also reduce the time you need to study in the future, because you won't have to relearn the same information. Make a plan and schedule short study sessions into your calendar. This is not about marathon intensive periods of study. Review information from each class starting a day later. After you've covered the most recent class, go back and study important older information to keep it fresh. And don't just reread your notes, that's ineffective. Use the other strategies in this video. And leave 2 to 3 days between study sessions on the same subject. The key is consistent short study sessions over time. Switch between ideas during a single study session for a particular class. This is called interleaving. Don't study one idea, topic, or type of problem for too long. Switching will highlight and contrast the similarities or differences between topics or types of questions. If you're doing problem solving, switching can help you choose the correct approach to solve a problem. This strategy will encourage you to make links between ideas as you switch between them. You want your mind to be nimble and easily able to jump between ideas and know how they relate to each other. Make sure you study enough information to understand an idea before you switch. You'll need to figure out what works best for you. Don't spend an entire session on one topic, but don't switch too often either. Try to make links between ideas as you move between them. And for your next study session, change the order you work through topics because that will strengthen your understanding even more. Switching will probably feel harder than studying one topic for a long time, but remember, we want to use what's most effective, not what's easiest. The next strategy is for when you have your textbook and notes in front of you. Ask yourself questions about how and why things work, and then find the answers in your class material. Explain and describe ideas with as many details as you can and connect the ideas to your daily life and experiences. This forces you to understand and explain what you're learning and connect it with what you already know. That helps you organize the new ideas and makes them easier to recall later. Creating how and why questions makes you think about how ideas are similar or different, and that improves your understanding. Start with your notes and textbook and make a list of the ideas you need to learn. Go down the list and ask yourself questions about how these ideas work and why. Then go through your class material again and look for answers to your own questions. Make connections between different ideas and explain to yourself how they work together. The specific questions you ask and how you break down ideas depends on what you're studying. It might be math, science, history, or something else completely. Check out the description below this video for some examples. Use specific, concrete examples. Relevant examples help demonstrate and explain ideas, which helps you to understand them better. Human memory hooks onto concrete information better than abstract information, so always look for real-life examples you can relate to. For example, scarcity is an abstract idea. You can explain it as the rarer something is, the higher its value will be. But we've used abstract terms to explain an abstract idea. Not so helpful. So we use a specific example to illustrate the idea. Think about a ticket scalper. If you purchase a ticket to a sports event at the start of the season, the ticket price is reasonable. But as the game day gets closer and the two teams are now at the top of the ladder, more people buy tickets. This scarcity drives up the cost of the tickets, and the ticket scalper charges more for the tickets. That's a concrete example of an abstract idea. You can collect examples from your teacher or professor, search your textbook or notes, and look out for examples in your daily life. Thinking of your own relevant examples is most helpful for your learning, but be careful to confirm with your teacher that your examples are accurate and relevant to the idea you're learning. Make the link between the idea and the example, and you'll understand how the example applies. Combine verbal material with visuals. Doing this gives you two ways of understanding and remembering the information later on. Find visuals in your notes and textbook and examine how the words are describing what's in the image. Then do it the other way around. How does the image represent what's described by the text? Look at the visuals and explain in your own words what they mean. Then take the words from your class materials and draw your own picture for them. Try to create different ways to represent the information, and start to use this strategy when you practice retrieving your knowledge later on. And just to clarify, this is not about learning styles. A great deal of research has shown that assessing your learning style and matching your study approach to that style does not improve your learning. Just because you might prefer pictures doesn't mean it's the most effective way for you to learn. You learn best when you combine words and visuals. And finally, this is the single most valuable study skill to help you boost your performance, so it's definitely worth mastering. Practice retrieving everything in your head you already know about a topic. Put away all your notes and textbooks and write down or sketch out everything you know right now. Why? Because retrieving your knowledge like this reinforces what you've learned and makes it easier to remember later on. But also, improvement comes with practice. If you want to get better at recalling information in exams, then you should practice recalling information now, just like you practice any other skill. Plus, it highlights what you don't know, and that's where you should focus your study time. Makes sense, right? So what's the best way to do this? Take as many practice tests as you possibly can, even if you have to make them up and swap with a friend. Or just start with a blank piece of paper and empty your brain. Write out everything you know, draw sketches or concept maps linking all the ideas together. Make sure you do this a while after you've learned something, so put away your notes. This is not about reciting information you've just glanced at in your textbook. Once you're finished, check what you've written against your class material. What did you get right or wrong, and what didn't you recall at all? That's perfect feedback and shows you where you need to get better. Now you know the 6 study strategies academic research says are the most effective. Here's a simple way to recall them for your next study session. If you'd like some free downloadable posters about these 6 strategies to put on your wall, follow the link in the description below this video. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Okay, so after sharing that video with students, and we also gave them a link to it so they could replay it as many times as they wanted to, it was time to try out some of those strategies in class together. The video said the single most effective one was retrieval practice. So we chose a topic that students hadn't done for a while, archaic freestanding sculpture. We handed out blank sheets of A3 paper and told them to empty their minds onto this sheet of paper. Even better if they could give some kind of structure to their thoughts, categories of information as it came out. And we let them do this for 5 to 10 minutes, and then we fed back as a group, and I made a definitive version on the board. And if there was anything that students had missed out, we got them to add that information to their mind map in another colour. So it was now very obvious what was the information that they needed to prioritise in their revision. We also took it one step further, and we had a look at the dual coding technique that video had referred to, that students learn best when they've got a combination of text and pictures. So we got students to sit there and to add little images or symbols to the elements of that mind map that they'd struggled with the most, so that they had 2 ways of hopefully remembering those. Finally, we tried to embed this idea of doing this again and again and again, so revisiting it. So we had one more go at that point. Flip over your sheet of paper, try it again. Did you get more this time? But even more importantly, we gave them an opportunity to practice it over the space of a week, so that they could start to get this idea of spaced practice, little and often, and not cramming. And this Friday, we're going to be giving them a quick factual test or quiz on the archaic period, just to see how they've got on with that strategy. We're also going to be embedding it in other sessions as well. So for example, we used it today to recap everything we knew about the black figure vase technique, but it's something that we're going to help students also get to grips with in terms of spacing out revision, creating revision timetables ahead of any mocks later in the year. So do check out the resources and the video from the Learning Scientists, and feel free to ask me any questions if you want to know a little bit more about how we have embedded this within our lessons.